This is Dune Talk, a DuneNewsNet.com production. Join us now for the latest Dune news, reactions, and lively discussions.
Hey everyone, welcome to this week's Dune Talk. If you're joining us for the first time, know that this is the official show of Dune Newsnet. We talk everything happening in the world of Dune, whether it's a movie, book, or games. Well, what a week it's been. There's been a lot of worm sign when it comes to casting announcements for Dune Part 2. This is Marcus, and I'm looking forward to reacting to that and the other news with the rest of the team.
Hey, this is Garin, a Dune companion. Excited to get the other guys' input on some of these rumored casting decisions. So it's kind of an interesting time, and I'm looking forward to their thoughts.
Yeah. So last time we were on the episode, over 2 weeks ago now, we said, who knows what could happen before the next episode. That's kind of the thing I like about doing. I'm just a little bit more spaced out now, since the news is a little bit fewer and far between. But when it does happen, it's pretty exciting, and there's a decent amount to talk about. So going to be a good one for sure.
Hey, Simon here. Like we said last time, possible rumors, who knows? And we got some possible official casting. We'll talk about it. Really excited, and some other stuff going on in the new Duniverse. By the way, like the sandworm reference, Marcus, in the beginning of the show.
Awesome. So let's get into the movie news.
Dune movie news.
Kicking off with casting. So the first news to hit was Florence Pugh. She's in advanced negotiations to play Princess Irulan. So this news comes from multiple reliable sources. Deadline, the Hollywood Reporter. So they came with the story on Tuesday. Florence, she's had a number of memorable performances in film. You might know her most recently as Yelena in Marvel's Black Widow and the subsequent Hawkeye miniseries. One thing it's important to note is that based on the reports, this isn't the final decision yet. So there are a few potential hurdles, and we're going to get into that later. Simon, I'm going to put you on the spot first. So you were the first in our team to bring up Florence in relation to this role. What appealed to you about her past performances, and what was your reaction to hearing this news?
So my first reaction, I've had a couple of crazy weeks since we recorded. I opened social media and I was like, wait, who's joking? Because I've called this a while ago, and I actually want to thank Johnny for bringing her to my attention. Like, I knew she was in Black Widow, and I knew that she was going to be in Hawkeye. But Johnny, when we first started doing the podcast, he kept talking about how Midsummer is this amazing movie. My girlfriend loves the movie also, and finally I got to watch it, and I was like, oh my God, she's such a tragic figure, and she can act. Like, I was like, she would be perfect for it. Princess Irulan, and then people were like, no, she doesn't look right. The internet. Well, I saw Black Widow. I was like, okay, I'm falling in love with this character. Then Hawkeye, I was like, she would be perfect. What I love about her is, if you look at the Marvel stuff, she's fun, she's light. Midsummer, without going into full spoiler mode of that movie, and that is one of the best movies I've seen probably the past 10 years. And I keep thinking about it nonstop. Thank you, Johnny. I blame you for that one. But it's her performance, how it starts off okay, and then slowly you see this, I don't want to say tragic performance, but just this emotion that I feel like Princess Irulan has a lot. And she's around the same age as Chalamet, Zendaya. She's worked with Chalamet. It's her performance. Like, you can get the very high, low, like Kate Bishop, this is crazy, from Hawkeye. And then you see the really calm, kind of like not sure what's going on Princess Irulan than in Midsummer. I think she's perfect. I mean, people were talking about another actress when this first got announced, a couple of months ago, when they were talking about possible cast, the one that's in Last Night in Soho. I still haven't seen that movie. For me, Florence Pugh, I would be happy. I think she's an amazing talent, and she's kind of what Irulan looks like when I think of Irulan in the Denis Villeneuve Duniverse.
I guess I'll carry the torch, since Simon was so kind with his comments there. So I don't think I ever outright mentioned her, at least on Twitter, publicly speaking on here. But as far as Princess Irulan, I think, and having read Dune Messiah as well in the last year or so, she is not as big a factor in the original novel, but she does have a presence that kind of carries throughout, and it becomes more of a factor, I would say, in the second novel, in Dune Messiah. And I think that all along, as far as what's been stirring around my head, I thought that they should go with a big name, just because I think that they've already kind of set the bar so high with casting that, like, for this role where this character is going to be in and around Timothée Chalamet and Zendaya, you can't cast someone that is not on their level, because they are superstars at this point, talent wise and exposure wise. So I was thinking, who is in that age range? Who has that, that profile? And I was thinking Anya Taylor-Joy, who Simon alluded to, has really popped up over the last couple of years. She's also blonde, around the same age. Saoirse Ronan, I also considered. She's been nominated for like 4 Oscars or something. She is a fantastic actor, and has also worked with Timothée Chalamet before as well. And other names, Elle Fanning was in there in my head. But of course, having been such a big fan of Midsommar, and also really liked Little Women, and of course I had seen Black Widow, I knew Florence Pugh was great, and I knew that she had worked with Timothée Chalamet, and I thought that they had really good chemistry. And I thought, similar to Simon, she can play this tragic kind of figure and this emotional turmoil very well. And I think that is important. Maybe not as much in this next film, but I think any casting for this part needs to be thinking about Dune Messiah, because Villeneuve has already made very clear he does have that intention. So I think it's a great fit. I was almost blown away, like speechless when I saw it, because it was, again, kind of almost plucked out of my head. Like, wow, that's like perfect. I can't imagine that they actually are going with that. As you mentioned, there are a couple of hurdles that we'll probably talk a little bit more in detail, but it's a really exciting report Justin Kroll at Deadline Hollywood had, and it was kind of out of the blue. I wasn't really expecting it. I just looked down at my phone and there it was. And it's the same thing happened later in the week, which is exciting as well. So I'm totally over the moon. If for some reason she doesn't get it, and again, we'll talk more about that in a second, I don't think it'd be the worst thing in the world. I did name just a bunch of other great options, I think, that fit the look and the age range. So she wouldn't be like the end all be all, but I think she would be a fantastic choice if it does end up going to her.
Yeah, I'm totally with you guys on this. I think it's interesting that in Irulan's role in the first book, for those of you that have read it, is really, she's a presence, but she's in the background, and her character interaction with Paul and others in the story is not as connected or intricate. But in Dune Messiah, it's a whole new ballgame with Irulan. So it doesn't surprise me, like you were saying, Johnny, well, both of you were saying, this is someone who has the gravitas, has the acting chops to really play with like a Timothée Chalamet and Zendaya and all the other big name actors. I think Denis is looking to Dune Messiah, and you've got to have someone with range. You've got to have someone with power and presence and strength and understanding, because that character really, really elevates in Dune Messiah. So I'm not as familiar with her. I obviously know her from Black Widow, but I'm not as familiar with some of her other work. But from what I've read about and just seeing her range, and I think she's got a great look. I mean, I'm not sure what I pictured Irulan to be in my mind, because again, her role on screen in the book in my mind is a little bit in the background. But her presence on screen is really great. I think she could do a lot to elevate Irulan in part 2, if that's what Denis does with the script. Marcus, you mentioned this in your article, that he could elevate, he could expand her role, he could create a lot more interaction between Irulan and the characters, since we're focusing on the Harkonnens a little more in part 2. So maybe there's going to be some scenes that aren't necessarily in the book, and with an actor like Florence, I think you could go a lot of different directions with that. So yeah, she's my pick.
Expanding her role potentially, or just the way that she has that range and can play it. I think it's really interesting to think about Irulan, for example, if in part 2 she does get a little bit more screen time than we might expect. The great thing about Florence Pugh is I feel like she can very much play like very likable and warm, and like someone that you want to, like, you admire, that you could see being a good character, or like a wholesome character. But then also she does have this way that she can just go, like, she could really flip the switch and like go over the edge into a situation where you feel bad for her, like you empathize with her, but you also are like almost afraid of her. So I think that would be something that would be, I think, vital, and to have that kind of dynamic is important. Not every actor can do that, but I think she could very, very much play both sides of that coin.
Going off Johnny's comment right now, and you, Garin, I do think Denis is thinking, Dune Messiah, and especially if you read Dune Messiah, that opening part without spoiling anything, but that little council, I can see her being very likable, but in the back being like, okay, I got a plan for this so-called emperor now of the known universe. I think if she doesn't get it, it is what it is, but I think she is perfect, and it's the range. And I think any casting, except the one that we'll talk about next, is very much, this is for the future of the Dune franchise now. We've already got our main characters. We're happy with that cast, but anything else may not even be for a small cameo in part 2, but it's down the line for Messiah. And, if there is Children of Dune and all that, because Princess Irulan plays a big deal in the later books, especially the first 3 books. First one, she gets her little cameo, and then it becomes very much about Irulan and her journey with Paul.
And I think it's worth noting for Florence that she also has a number of great performances in period pieces, like set in history. So we mentioned the Little Women, of course, but then there's also Lady Macbeth and Outlaw King and King Lear. So those are like already giving ideas of how she would perform in like sort of acting as royalty. So based on that, I can really picture her for this role. Going back to the point about her presence in this second movie in Dune Part 2. So yeah, if we're going by the book, like she wouldn't appear that much, but I'm convinced that we're going to get more of her in this movie than we do in the book. Just going on how like Denis has expanded certain elements in the first film, and I think that ties into the whole what we'll get into in a moment. Like, I don't think that they would be able to convince her to come on board to this project if she was just going to appear like for the last couple of minutes. So I think that's definitely going to play a factor. So going on to that point, as mentioned, she's in advanced stages of negotiations, as we've mentioned, but this isn't the final choice. So one of the things that was brought up is she's waiting to see the latest version of the script. We heard earlier reports that the script was finished, but apparently that's not entirely the case. So they're probably doing some additional drafts on that. And another aspect was the potential casting conflict. So if she gets a role in the Madonna biography film, and there's conflicts there in the cast. So I would imagine that at least that's the way that I'm reading into the news, that if I was her, I would be looking into this script and saying, okay, like how big of a role is this actually going to be? I think maybe for her, it's not just enough to say, oh, you'll have a big role in Dune Messiah later on, but like she would want to like have something to show for this role. Johnny, your thoughts on like, if you hear we're at this stage in negotiations and these potential hurdles, like how likely do you think that those are to be issues?
Yeah, so I would say with this situation, it's probably pretty flexible, given like the reporting so far and what we know about it. I would say her role may be expanded, maybe kind of significantly, but I also feel that it wouldn't require that much screen time still. I don't think she's going to be like a co-lead or anything like that. So you heard about the filming, the production on the first part of Dune, and a lot of those cast members were only there for like very short blips of time, not more than a couple of weeks in some instances. So, and those were people with, decent chunks of screen time. And I think that it's something, even if she gets the Madonna role, maybe they'll be able to work it where she can still do both. They were able to accommodate people on the first film, like Oscar Isaac and whatnot. So, and Zendaya, when she was there, as much as she was recorded and filmed for the movie, she was only there for like 4 days or something. Stellan Skarsgård, who had a decent, presence and role in the film, he was there for less than a week. So we're talking about, I think that they could make it work even if she gets both. But I think, which one would she choose if given the option? I mean, with a big lead role playing Madonna versus like a smaller role in Dune, it's kind of, I mean, from us, this might be a toss up, but for her, maybe, she wants to really pursue that. I'm of course being selfish. I hope that she goes with Dune no matter what, even if it does come down to making the choice. Because as we've said, it is, I mean, it's going to be, we're talking about potentially like a best picture like level film here again, because that's what's so great when this movie gets 10 Oscar nominations, when they're trying to negotiate with people and they're trying to get people's attention. You can't really ignore that, and that just helps the film. And I think they have that in their heads going forward. So, and then of course Dune Messiah, as we mentioned, Villeneuve, he keeps saying in the press, Dune Messiah, Dune Messiah. If during negotiations or talks with her, they're very clear, like, you would have a larger role in this next film, and that would be a few years down the road, but it would be like something pretty significant. I think, again, that's another kind of like bargaining chip there. So again, I think there are other great options for this role. So if she does decide not to do it, or something gets, there's conflict there, I won't be like that broken up about it, unless like the next option is just like not even close to being as good. But she, I would really like to see her get it. And I think, truthfully, if I was giving like a percentage of how confident I feel she's going to stick around and actually stay with it and get it, I would say I'm like pretty confident, because I feel like when they say, oh, it's, it's the negotiations might not go through, it most of the time it still goes through. It would have to be something like pretty wild, I think, for her not to actually go forward with it.
Another thing that you guys haven't even mentioned about Florence is, without going in full spoiler mode for the upcoming Marvel movies, her character is going to play a big story arc in what is happening in this other phase of Marvel. So maybe that's something that she has to think about. Can I commit to Marvel, which I'm 95% sure she already has a contract for X amount of movies, and can she do the Madonna movie, which I didn't even know about the Madonna movie until, you guys mentioned it. Fingers crossed, I would love to see her in it, but like Johnny said, if it doesn't happen, it doesn't happen. Well, time will only tell. Time will only tell.
She's in a lot of projects, you guys, even Nolan's Oppenheimer. She's in a lot of great projects, but that's what makes her so appealing to me, right? If these
That is one of the few reasons why she's appealing to me.
And so I really think she would bring a lot to part two. I think there's a lot of people that appreciate her skill and talent, and it would bring more. I mean, I'm grateful for all the attention to part one, but I want more people watching part two, right? So anything that helps in that effort, and I just think she brings so much to the cast.
Yeah, that's actually, Garin, that's something that I hadn't even thought about that much, but is a great point, is the potential, because her profile has grown so much, and like the potential bankability of including her in this movie. I mean, she has over like 7 million followers on Instagram. So like, we're talking about someone who's really grown. Like, she's
almost as much as you, Johnny.
she's in the Marvel universe, like the MCU, in multiple big projects so far. And she's like getting thrown around for every other big project in town that's not a big Marvel movie. Christopher Nolan's next film, the Madonna biopic. So that's clearly someone that has, a lot of attention and is garnering that. Now, with the Madonna thing, another thing that we should note is the report with her name and other names came out like a week or two prior to this news. So they're also clearly like narrowing down their choices for that movie. So we could find out pretty quickly, like if this is going to happen or not. And this news coming out could force, the decision making on that Madonna movie into, okay, so do we need to like trying to commit to her right now? Or should we just say, oh, she wants to go do that, we're going to go with someone else? So this could be like kind of almost like a dual-edged sword, depending on how it's interpreted by other people involved, like in the process. Because there's another big name, not maybe as big, but Julie Garner, for example, is someone who's in Ozark and is in another new Netflix show. She is also in contention for that, among other people. So they have options. Dune has options. It's going to be really interesting. But I do think that once it's named like this, I think it's going to happen, honestly.
Okay, so that's Princess Irulan. Likely, we'll see. Hopefully, there will be confirmations either way sooner rather than later. Then, of course, there are two other key roles that we're looking for in Dune Part 2. So that's, of course, Feyd-Rautha and the Emperor himself. So out of nowhere, this week we got news on that the Harkonnen character, Feyd-Rautha, so the nephew of Baron Harkonnen. And the name there is Austin Butler. And here the reports mentioned again as that he's in early stages of joining the film. But again, the fact that this is being reported by all these reputable trades, it's likely that this is quite solid at the moment. So I think there was like some discussion around Florence for the role of Princess Irulan. When it came to Austin Butler, I saw like a lot more discussion. I think it was a lot more polarizing in both ways. I think one of the things that came up a lot is that people were less familiar with him. I'll start with you, Garin. Like, what do you think of the casting? Are you familiar with his previous works?
I'm not familiar with Austin Butler. I realize he was in the Shannara Chronicles, and I think I did see some of those. So no, I'm not familiar with him. I have a lot of strong opinions about the character of Feyd. I mean, he is a handsome, devious, bloodthirsty person. So I'd be curious to see. That's kind of like we were talking about with the casting Princess Irulan. You've got to have a lot of range. You've got to have the right characteristics, the right look. With Feyd, I even think it might even be more so, because this character does play an extremely important role in this story, counter to our main protagonist. So yeah, I don't know what I think of him yet. Maybe he's got the look. I just don't know if he's got the range. So maybe you guys know.
When this news came out, my first reaction was like, who? Then I went to IMDb and I looked. I was like, oh, it's the guy playing Elvis. I'm like, does that movie come out anytime soon? Maybe it's just hype promoting that Elvis movie. That movie doesn't come out until I think midsummer, like June or July. Then I looked at his IMDb. I was like, I have no idea who this guy is. I've seen Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. Love that movie. That might be my favorite Tarantino movie, but it's a whole different story. And I just Googled his character in that movie. I was like, oh yeah, I kind of remember that character, but his performance wasn't something I was like, oh yeah, that's that guy. And he did so well in that performance. I have no idea who this guy is. I'm going to sound kind of mean, but he looks like a pretty boy, which Faye should be a pretty boy. But I think there might be better people that have certain roles that are known already. I know Johnny has his point of view on this. But overall, it's just like, okay. But you never know. He might impress everyone. Johnny, did people finish your poll also about the hair? I'm very curious. Johnny had a poll on his Twitter, I saw. Overall, cool. Maybe he's amazing as Elvis, but those movie biopics, especially like musicals, usually don't do it for me. So I don't know. Maybe Denise sees something in him. Maybe, I don't know. Kind of that one, I was just like, say what? I'm going back to bed when I saw that news.
So yeah, I've definitely talked about this like casting a decent amount on Twitter. And so yeah, my first reaction was like, what? Like I was very surprised. Like it was not someone that I had named or talked about or considered whatsoever. But in the same like moment, I was like, that, like I liked how it wasn't someone obvious, because I had tweeted about that even I think maybe just the night before, like the day before, saying, everyone's talking about like a handful of names or a couple names, and I'm like, I almost don't like how it's gotten to that point, because if it isn't one of them, people are just going to be disappointed. And I don't think I don't think it's fair, because there really hasn't been any indication that these other people would be involved necessarily. That's just kind of like, oh, maybe this means this, or they're going to do this. But yes, so I was shocked, but then also I breathed a sigh of relief also at the same time, because I could see him as Feyd. It wasn't like I saw it and I was like, oh no, like I can't, there's no way this is going to work. He's someone I did see. So I haven't seen him in very much outside of Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, where he does have a small role in that movie. I will say in that movie, I've seen that movie like 5 or 6 times. I really love that movie. He isn't himself in that. Like he's definitely playing, like he's in character. Like he is a creepy, like dirty kind of weirdo. He's one of the Manson kids, right? So he is not like playing the pretty boy. Like he has long, nasty hair, and he's like, his eyes are all messed up. And then he pops in at the end with a gun talking about how he's the devil and all this other stuff. So he definitely can play like a crazy, like a crazed person, like in the eyes and everything, which is what I said. And alternatively though, as Garin was pointing out, he is a pretty boy. Like he has if you go and look, and I tweeted that, with the different excerpts from the novel where it describes how he looks in Feyd. He's 16 in the book. And Austin Butler is, of course, just like Timothée Chalamet, just like Zendaya, is older, but he still has like almost like a baby face, and he has like those like more fuller lips and a round face and the long like hair. So I can definitely see that. Now I'm curious, and as Simon was pointing out, I did put on that poll, and the vast majority of people said they think he's going to have hair in the movie, and I think that genuinely that could be something that they're going to like really actually go with, because the way they've gone with the Harkonnen so far is they are on this like terrible planet, and they are just like almost like based on what their environment and everything, they look sickly and they have like this baldness to them and everything else. So I think that like thematically and narratively there could be an interesting into that, where Feyd is like almost this, he's like this exception to the rule. He's like the favorite like golden child that they have like somehow maintained, they're like kept up to the point where he looks fairly normal, like he looks healthy, because the Baron knows at some point he needs to groom him to be this face for the empire that he's trying to control, which I think is could be a really interesting thing. Now maybe they don't do that whatsoever. Maybe they either have him shave his head or put on a bald cap, and they go with the totally white kind of more ghostly kind of look to him. But I actually really like that, because again, what this casting has done is like really changed my thought process about how they might depict Feyd. The two big names that people were talking about a lot leading up to this was Barry Keoghan, who is the Irish actor who was in Eternals and some other films with Christopher Nolan's Dunkirk and Killing of a Sacred Deer, who is fantastic. He is a fantastic actor. I really, really liked him. And then Robert Pattinson, of course, in the last week, he was like, "Oh, I'd love to be in Dune," and everyone was like, "Oh my God, like could he be Feyd-Rautha?" Now he would be a little too old to play Feyd-Rautha, but I could still buy it, I think, to a degree. But with both of those guys, they wouldn't really be playing. I couldn't see them as like the pretty boy Feyd necessarily. Like I would imagine them like shaved heads, bald cap, and like very like painted white, and they would be like a little bit rougher and like kind of like more monstrous, whereas and they can play very disturbed, like freaky characters very well, the two of them. Whereas with Austin Butler, I can definitely see him being more like very much the pretty boy, very much like the kind of he has like that personality, and he has like Feyd, ultimately he thinks he's more badass than he actually is, right? So I think Austin Butler and what Denis Villeneuve can do with him, both in the script and the direction, is really play that up. Like he's supposed to be this darker, broken mirror image almost of like what Paul is. And I think if you look at Austin Butler and you look at Timothée Chalamet, you can definitely see that. And I think Austin Butler, I've seen pictures of him when he played Elvis, he did bulk up and he like had this workout routine and whatnot. He is a bigger guy. He's like 6 feet tall. And so I think he can definitely bulk up if they want him to. He can be bigger. He can be more physically have that presence, but also he can play that pretty boy, kind of like he has an interesting personality, and he's kind of like cunning, and he is trying to get in your head. I think that could really work. And maybe this is a dissenting opinion. Maybe this is just blasphemy for me to say this. I'm sure I'll get some reactions here, but truth be told, a couple times I've read Dune, I've never thought that Feyd is like that, the most complex character like I've ever read, or like as a villain, like he was the most like nuanced, or like, oh, there's so many interesting like details to this guy. Like, and he's not, frankly, compared to some of the other characters, a lot of the characters in Dune are like peripheral. Like they are not the main attraction. It really is like the Paul show, and some other characters do get bigger moments and stuff, but I think I can see the vision is ultimately like my message here. So wouldn't have been my first choice. I never thought of him, but hearing the news, I was like, like I've been thinking more about Feyd and that character and what they can do with him in the movie more in the last couple of days than the entire time previously. I was just looking forward to, Feyd, like I wonder who they're going to get for him. There's some really good, actors they could get. Whereas with this, I'm like, okay, this can be interesting. And I think, it's not final, it's not finalized. If it fell through and they got someone else, okay, well, I guess we'd have to see who it is. Now there were two other names mentioned that I'm sure you might have seen or heard, and that was a reporter, a writer, a film writer. He said that he had also heard they were looking at Harry Styles and Ty Sheridan, who you might know from the main character in Ready Player One. He was also in some smaller films like Mud, and like he was in The Card Counter last year with Oscar Isaac, actually. And I don't think Ty Sheridan has any like personality, or like he's not a pretty boy. Like he's just a very normal looking guy. Like he's like my age. So I'm really glad they didn't go with him. And on the flip side with Harry Styles, I mean, I liked him well enough in Dunkirk. In Eternals, he shows up for like literally half a scene and says like nothing. So maybe they could get that to work. He obviously has a huge fan base, which would be very interesting and a boon for the film. But ultimately, I think between those three, if those are the only three names that we know for sure were in contention, I feel like very glad that they went with Austin Butler, because I see the most potential with him, I think, of those three. So yeah, really interesting. We'll talk more. I really want to hear more about what you guys think.
The Harry Styles thing, when it came up, even a couple of months ago, I was like, really? You're going to get another singer to be Feyd-Rautha? Is that like the tradition of Dune?
It's funny mentioning Harry Styles, because you mentioned like the singer aspect to it. He was one of the finalists. Harry Styles was one of the finalists to play Elvis in the Elvis movie. And that went to Austin Butler. So now Austin Butler is just stealing. If he's stealing roles from Harry Styles, that must mean there must be something there. Additionally, I will say the few times I've seen the Elvis trailer in Dolby or IMAX when I've gone to see Batman last week or so, I don't know what it is about that movie. I don't give a damn about Elvis, to be totally honest. And I don't like Baz Luhrmann is very much an acquired taste. Like if you like his style, you'll like that movie usually. Every time it's a really well cut trailer, I think every time I watch it, I'm like, I just get and not goosebumps necessarily, but it's an interesting like project. It is coming out this summer. I heard there's a rumor they may premiere it at Cannes Film Festival, which could be interesting if it is kind of has that profile to it. And I did hear also there were multiple people like insiders and other film journalists who said it's a Warner Brothers film, Elvis is, and apparently the buzz is like very good about him in that movie. And so it's possible that they already have seen that movie, the people that do the casting, and Denis and these other people associated with Legendary. So if there's that word moving around and they know he's might be blowing up in the next year or so, you could also understand that might be a reasoning about why they would want to pursue him potentially.
And so I have to concur with everybody. I had no, he didn't come to my mind at all beforehand for the role. So when it came up, I was like, wait, who's that? And then I remembered, okay, Shannara Chronicles, I had watched a few episodes of that more because anything that's sci-fi and fancy, I'll give it a chance and I'll check it in. That's my genre. But I don't remember him really standing out to me there. But when I saw the appearance and I started digging through photos for when I was writing a report about him, I said, yeah, this really makes sense. In terms of the appearance, especially some of those photos where he was sort of posing really serious, in the Elvis style. And I would say that my main reservation is does he have that capability to sort of show that psychopathic, sadistic side of Feyd? So I know that in Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, we got to see that the aspect of him, but it was a small role. So that would be my main concern there. But yeah, I think it totally makes sense that they didn't go with a huge already well-known name. I think that would maybe detract too much from the movie if they brought someone who just appeared on the Batman and then they bring him here in for a minor role. I don't know if that would really make as much sense.
Yeah, and really the last thing, because now that you said that, it also makes me think of something else. And I don't feel like the need to defend this just because it's Dune or because it's whatever. It is interesting to see some of the backlash, I guess you could call it, that some people have had to this. Especially I feel like I see it mostly from the people I've seen so far, is that yeah, he's not the biggest name, or he hasn't been in the most proven roles or films yet. But if there is something there, and I think there genuinely is, you don't really know until you get that role and you get that film that really sets you off. And we've seen Denis Villeneuve do that with other actors before. I mean, who knew who Ana de Armas was before Blade Runner 2049? I'd never heard of her, and apparently she had been in some sort of sci-fi movie with Keanu Reeves or something. So she had been in smaller stuff, but I think you really have to give people a chance. I mean, with Dune Part 1, Sharon Duncan, who is that? Who are you casting as Kynes? I don't know who that is, but she was fantastic. She was one of the best parts of the movie for me. I thought she was great, and she was one of basically the people who not many of us were familiar with. It was not like the biggest name or like the most American like figure, because she was mostly in British projects. So I think that, you know, you just really have to like kind of give something a chance, and then if it doesn't work, it doesn't work. But you have to wait and see what happens with it. And then lastly, you know, talking about Denis Villeneuve's films, what he's done with people in other projects, you know, it's Denis Villeneuve. Like, I have yet to see a bad performance in one of this man's movies. Like, he doesn't miss. And Francine Maisler, the casting director for Dune and his last films as well, Blade Runner, Arrival, Sicario, she is like a godly like level casting director. She goes back like 20 years. She's the only casting director I know by name, because that's how good she is. Like, she has done everything from television. She did Succession's casting all the way to the original Spider-Man trilogy, through many of Villeneuve's films, Terrence Malick films, Steve McQueen films. So she knows what she's doing. And so she's working closely with Denis, just like they did on part one. I don't care who they cast, really, because I do feel very confident, and I trust their decision to, you know, be the professionals. We aren't casting directors. We aren't film directors. We don't have like the inside track on any of that stuff. So I'm very curious. I'm very excited to see it and what they can do with it. And like I said, Denis, I mean, he's one of the best directors, not just because he does these big science fiction world building movies that I really love and enjoy, but I love how much attention he pays to performance, and that the performances he does get out of actors. So I think he could pretty much take anyone and, you know, put them in a position to be successful and get something good out of them. So now this does leave us in an interesting spot, I will say, because that's really 2 of 3 down, right? So, and we have one that's like, oh my God, everyone's like in love with it. And another one where like there's kind of almost some contention or like some uncertainty. And now we have The Emperor, who I would say is maybe the biggest one they have to really get, because was Feyd mentioned in the first film? No. Was Irulan mentioned in the first film? No. The Emperor is mentioned time and again. His presence is looming over the entire film. They definitely have to get that one. Like, they have to get someone who people are going to be excited about. And I think, given what we're looking at so far and what they did on part one, I do think they're going to go with a bigger name. You know, I have no idea. I'm not even going to bother speculating. We've done a lot of that before, but it is going to be really interesting. And especially to see how quickly that news comes, because this one was like bang, bang. Maybe this next one's going to take longer to figure out. And it sounds like they are pushing filming is going to be pretty late in the summer or early fall. So I'm just really excited. I can't wait to see who it is, because then once we get that news, it's pretty much like kind of settled at that point. So this is big. It's kind of, we're getting into it. We're getting into it for sure.
Yeah, I think the last thing I do want to say about this this casting choice, or about both the casting choices, I mean, everybody is entitled to have their opinion, their views, their preferences. I do think it's important to like show respect to other people and not attack people because they liked or disliked a casting choice. So I think at the end of the day, like, what I want to say is fan cast responsibly. Like, you know, it's not necessarily going to be like always the person you have in mind, but the people who are working behind the scenes, they have a lot more insights into what they're looking for. Like, they've had those auditions, and they'll see the true capabilities of these actors. And as I was mentioning before, I don't think having a lesser known name is necessarily a bad thing, especially in this type of film. I mean, that wasn't a problem in Dune Part 1. I wasn't taken out of the film by some of the big names, but I think yeah, it does have its advantages to bring someone who's maybe like newer to film. Like, and to be fair, like Austin Butler, he has had a lot of TV performances, which I'm not aware of. I haven't watched most of those TV series, but he also has the acting capabilities if he's been a regular cast member. So of course we had the HCA Film Awards and a couple of other awards that have come out since then, and really important, like in lead up to the BAFTAs and the Oscars at the end of this month. And the great news out of the HCA Film Awards was, of course, that Dune won 4 awards, well deserved, all of them, and one of them was for Best Director. It was a shared award, but it's great to see Denis Villeneuve getting that recognition. So, Garin, from your perspective, when you saw those recent awards, like, are you happy to see that, you know, we're at least getting recognition in those characters from some organizations?
Yeah, I mean, I wasn't as surprised, obviously, with best score. In fact, I was pretty sure it was going to win. It was going to win that. Just a fantastic score for this film. Cinematography and visual effects. Again, I was looking forward to those being awarded to Dune, but I was extremely excited about the best director award to Denis Villeneuve. I realize it's a tie with Jane Campion, but I still think this is something that is and Johnny probably knows how this works better than I do, but could this be a harbinger of things to come? Could this be equating the two? I realize these are two different groups, they're two different voting bodies, but could this be an indicator of something? So I was really excited to see Denis win this, even if it was in tandem with Jane Campion.
Yeah, absolutely. It's always exciting to see Denis, the man himself, get some recognition for directing. And yeah, I was very excited. I was very surprised, pleasantly surprised to see that he got that. And to be placed, I mean, it's almost more like complimentary to be placed on the level of Jane Campion, because she has been sweeping so much this year. So to have him kind of on stage and accepting that as well was pretty cool. And yeah, it is a critics group. So, and it is just like, it's Hollywood critics, which is a significant group because there are many significant figures over there. But it was nice to see on that kind of most high profile critics stage to get that recognition. And then, yeah, Greg Fraser, love to see him getting more momentum picked up from that, because I do really hoping he gets the Oscar, especially after seeing the Batman. It's like, you got to crown this guy already. And then Hans Zimmer was kind of like a no-brainer. So yeah, I think it was great in visual effects. I mean, yeah, if they had the sound category, which they actually didn't, that would have been just another one in Dune's tally there. So very good, very good. This weekend we get to the BAFTAs, which should be very good and bolster some Oscar potential there, as well as the Critics' Choice Awards. So those are both Sunday. Looking forward to those. I'm sure we'll probably be discussing those next time around. But yeah, really exciting, and I'm glad to see it. And yeah, up and up from there. And I am it's weird because Oscars like right around the corner, almost by I think the next time we do our next episode, the Oscars will have happened or just about to happen. So it's coming up quickly, and it's nice that Dune is really back in the conversation and picking up that momentum.
I agree with both of you guys. I'm excited about the awards. I think it's great that Denis is getting some love. Sadly, he's not getting some love from certain people. That's all I'm going to leave it at. But, more awards, more people hearing about Dune. It's back on HBO Max, so feel free to stream it. Stream it all you can. Stream it 24 hours. If you can loop it, that would even be great. No, but honestly, it's just getting the word out. Dune is in the buzz again, and it's good. It's good, and hopefully more people will see it and share it with friends. I want Dune to be one of those cult classics, and when part 2 comes out, it will just blow up, and everyone will be like, "Oh my God, I gotta get my midnight tickets," and not just us four and certain other people in the world. But I think more press is always good, and just appreciate cinema, people.
Yeah, and I think it's just been a win for Dune. Like, even if it's not, for example, winning the best picture in some of these awards, like for example for the HCA Film Awards, it won the most amount of awards from any film. So I mean that says something. And also for the nominations, it's always been like the first or second most nominated. So I think for anybody who was on the edge, or they didn't check it out for some reason, or it wasn't their genre or whatever, I think it's getting attention. People are gonna notice that. So that's a wrap for movie news. Let's go and address one expanded story.
The Duniverse, books, comics, games, collectibles, and more.
So we have one Duniverse story today, which is related to games. So we've actually had a lot of games announced for Dune the past year, whether it's the board games, role-playing games, video games, all that. And last week we had an announcement of a completely new game from Gale Force 9, which is Dune, Arrakis, Dawn of the Fremen. So the premise of this game, so it's a board game for 2 to 4 players. And the premise of the game is that you actually take control of a Fremen tribe and you're engaging in tribal warfare. It's a survival game, so there are elements of cooperation. You can trade with the other tribes, or you can compete with them for resources. But it's really that whole element of survival is tough on Arrakis. So how did these Fremen tribes manage it in the past? And the setting of this game is also intriguing. This is set tens of thousands of generations before the events of the movie. So it's really a fresh slate, new period to explore. So Garin, I want to start with you again. Like, what was your reaction to this completely new game?
Yeah, I thought it was interesting. I am really excited at how many of these board games they're making based off of the Dune theme. Obviously, Gale Force 9 and other companies that are doing this, they're using data to make sure they're filling the product category with products people will buy. So again, kind of like you were just saying, Simon, you want everyone to see this film and to make it into a cult classic. And the peripheral products that come from a film is an indicator of that, right? So yeah, I looked at this game in depth, and I'm a big Risk fan. I really like the game of Risk, although this is cooperative. There's cooperation between the players. But I thought it was really interesting that they would theme it around Arrakis long before the Atreides family takes over the planet. So there's no Atreides, there's no Harkonnen here. It's just between interactions of factions, not factions, but different tribes of the Fremen. So kind of an interesting take on it. I actually think it looks really quite fun from what I can tell. And I know they do a lot of background planning and storyline development for these games. Having interviewed one of the main designers over at Gale Force 9, they really take this seriously. They know Dune, they know the story, they know the characters. And I really think this is one that I would want to pick up and really kind of explore, because I just think there's a lot of dynamics that can play out in a game. 2 to 4 players, so it's not like there's 10. But that's about the number of players that I would play with people who like games like this. So yeah, I'm intrigued.
I think it's great. More Dune is always good. Let's have some more collectibles also. Let's have some more action figures, some more pops. I need more stuff on my shelves.
Yeah, I feel similarly to Simon, I suppose. I still do need to. I got it for Christmas, so it wasn't that long ago, I guess, at this point. But I do need to dig into my own Dune game and get everyone to sit down and try to play it with them. But yeah, I mean, I think the concept is cool. I think that setting is not something at least I've heard of really before with any Dune like stories on Arrakis. So it could be an interesting like perspective there to have that for the gameplay. But yeah, the more the merrier when it comes to Dune. I'm sure they'll be pumping out. I mean, the movie is, if it keeps its release date, it's like a year and a half away, right? So I'm sure there's plenty more to come as far as games and collectibles, as Simon mentioned, and other items between now and then. So I just got to try to keep up with it.
And I think what really appeals about this is, talking about this time setting, I see sometimes people make the argument that Dune is a story about, like the Atreides and what happens with them, and, the Kwisatz Haderach. But at the end of the day, this is taking place in a universe of millions of worlds. There's all these different cultures and all these different events that are going on. There's just so much to explore there. Like even just staying on Arrakis and going past into the past, like learning about the origin of the Fremen. I think it's just great that they're expanding out in these different directions and offering something new for both the gaming perspective and like the storyline. So that is a wrap for Dune Talk this week. So we're also looking forward to hear your thoughts on what you thought about the casting and all the other news that's been coming out. So just let us know in the comments. So let's go ahead and sign off.
I'll step up to the plate here. A super great episode, being able to talk about the casting in depth and getting 2 pieces of news to talk about. And we actually ended up delaying the first episode or this episode this week because of other extraneous things, but then we got another piece of news out of it, so that was pretty awesome. And yes, as Marcus made a great point, like be respectful, people, for the love of everything Dune. I'm seeing people on Twitter talking about slapping the casting director and all this other stuff. I'm like, oh my god, like let's bring it down a notch. Like you don't know what you're talking about. So I don't even know what I'm talking about. I'm not trying to act like I'm anything. So just give it a chance and let's have fun with it while we still can. It is a ways away, and there's a lot of development between now and then. So, and I'm looking forward to the next couple of weeks. Dune racking up awards. So that'll be a fun thing to talk about in the next episode. Again, Johnny Sobchak. You can find me on Twitter at Johnny Sobchak. And good to see everyone. Thanks for supporting. Leave comments. We'd love to hear some thoughts on the casting and otherwise. And I'll see you next time around.
Yeah, honestly, internet, don't be that guy. A year ago, 2 years ago, everyone was saying Robert Pattinson as Batman. And now I see so many people praising them as the greatest Batman ever. Hey, there's a whole science of casting characters, and actors and actresses for roles. We're just giving our point of views, but who would have thought Timothy Chalamet would have been an amazing Paul, or Oscar Isaac as Duke Leto? So people know what they're doing. You might not agree with it, but it is what it is. At the end of the day, if you want to make a change, get a film degree. Go out and make your own movies. I'm sorry if I'm going to be that guy, but seriously, you can find me on Twitter, Simon Dowdy, S Dowdy. Just be respectful.
Hey, really enjoyed our topic today. This is Garin. You can find me on Twitter at Dune Companion. I really, again, we've said it a number of times, I put my faith in Denis. I really believe that he's going to make the right choice. He knows his craft. He knows how to work with actors. And so I trust him, even if it's someone that I'm not really familiar with or I'm not really comfortable with at first. I trust he's going to do the right thing.
Yeah, and this is Marcus Gabriel. So thanks for tuning in. You can find coverage from myself and other team members on DuneNewsNet.com, and you can find me at DuneNewsNet on Twitter and Instagram. So looking forward to catching up with you all again.
We hope you've enjoyed Dune Talk. Remember to like, subscribe, and turn on notifications so you know when the next episode drops. Stay tuned to DuneNewsNet.com and add us to your social feeds. Be the first to hear breaking news and reviews.
Simon has no more comments.
I'm going to make the stupid joke. Let's not forget Space Navigator 45.
What?
I'm going to be like, who's going to play Space Navigator number 45?
I hope we get Navigator in part 2. That'd be awesome.
Because that character is very crucial. Most underrated character. Most underrated Dune character ever.